Welcoming back to Weekend Walkabout, where we're in our gardens and yours virtually.
We're from gardenatozz.org. I'm Stephen Nicola.
I'm Janet McConovich. And this is Winter Interest in the Landscape, and Chapter 2 is about critiquing what you have. So what you have or what you're thinking about getting. We're working off of the outline that's available on our website on the webinar audience notes page. And we'd like to get a couple of, so we're going to pull up a poll here, launch poll. We're going to ask you several questions here. Those of you who are interested in this, you can help us out because we're looking at what matters most, what you think matters most toward winter interest in the landscape, where you are when you look at your landscape, and a little bit more.
Is it being shown? Can you see the poll, Sonia?
Yep, I think it's visible. So, yep.
Okay.
There we go. We were starting to get some answers in.
I just wasn't sure if it was visible.
I think people are deciding.
Yeah.
If you can't see the poll, if you look to the bottom of your screen, there's probably an icon that says polling. It might pull it up if you're not seeing it. And remember to hit submit once you've chosen your questions.
And there's 2 questions, right?
There are 3.
3. Okay, I only saw 2. Yeah. Okay.
It'll roll up to the 3rd one. If you get out your transcription tools or whatever those are called, it's very hard to write in any way that we can read. There is a typing tool. So we're looking at what people are, we're trying to get a feel for mostly what people are looking at and where they are when they're looking. So you're helping us figure that out. And cross my fingers, helping us get through a lot more material than we should be trying to get through.
Which we always do.
Well, which we always do, but I'm really pushing it this time. So lots of perennials in people's gardens are getting their interest. And we have a lot of people who are out walking around in their yards. So we don't have to stay with the window view. See how many people?
Mm-hmm.
There are 63%, 68% looking out a window, but there's still the second place is really people split between all 3 of those places.
Good. Well, we haven't ended it yet.
Well, we will very shortly because we need to keep on moving. And most people, I think, have got the gist of what we're looking for here. Okay, great. All right.
Okay.
Go ahead and we're going to go a 3, 2, 1. And oops, Steve.
I just ended before.
And let's share the results. So we're looking at pretty evenly split between whether it's the object, the place it is in the scene, or the variables that go, and that's good because that is very much what happens. You can have good, bad, and indifferent all happening at the same time. Most of the people are looking out through windows of their gardens, but a good number of you are out trucking around in your cars and walking around in the yard looking, and that's good because it gives us more dimension on the garden. And it looks like we're a little heavier on evergreens that are drawing people's attention than perennials, but not as much in the way of sculpture or paths. So I think we can go with that.
Stop sharing.
Yep. And then close the poll at the top.
Okay, I'll give you back control.
Okay.
Oops.
So the most important thing is to think about where you're going to see it from. So pick the window that you're most often at. You'll recheck afterwards. You'll walk out and fill the feeders afterwards and take a look at where you're thinking about putting something. But start from the place where you're most often going to be, because this little group of plants, there's a leatherleaf viburnum. There's a leatherleaf viburnum, a weeping white pine, and a different kind of a viburnum on the left there around a garden with some statuary in it and a bench. But it's not seen from this angle in the winter. It's seen from this angle, which is an entirely different angle, an important thing to keep in mind, because it's going to change your background for everything. And once you can look out, then you're looking for the tall, bright things. Those are the natural focal points. The tallest thing, the brightest thing, the thing that is the color that nothing else is. Those are going to get your attention. We'll worry about whether they're in the right place later, but that's what's going to get your attention. And flower, there is some flower. There's certainly some alpines blooming now, and the witch hazels are blooming very early in the spring, late in the winter. But they don't last for a long time and can be outshone even by a snowsuit. So don't be looking at the color of the flowers. Be looking more at the overall color and shape of the things that are out there. Statuary is another matter. Keeps its color.
Yep. All year.
I want that bird, Steve.
That one's pretty cool, isn't
yeah,
he?
I definitely want that bird. Is this at that nursery over on the west side of the state?
Blue Horizons.
Blue Horizons Nursery. So even brown can be the thing that stands out, despite the fact that there's all those gold. There's a gold false cypress in the background there. There's a golden pine, maybe a Chief Joseph.
That might be
pine.
Chief Joseph, as bright
There's
as
a golden,
he is.
gold tip juniper in the foreground, and yet they're being outshone, even the bamboo, by the brown bird. So what happens is the things that are catching your attention can be a striking shape, especially if it is a different shape than anything else around it. So a pyramid could stand out because it's mounds, and upright can stand out because they're spreaders. So the only grass that's standing up is over here to the right, and it's going to get the attention, even though there is perhaps more mass of the blonder grass, probably fountain grass in the background. But we put a bunch of upright grasses together, and then nobody stands out. So sometimes getting things to stand out or picking what you want to stand out is a matter of skinnying things down to fewer plants. I think we have a visitor behind me. So a mass of grass is going to then be nothing but a mass. It was vertical when it was just one, but it's not vertical when it's a bunch together. And then things happen, like the trees make more difference than anything else because they are more upright. That's a Hicks yew, grown probably 15 feet tall. And among all of the other yews that are around there that are more mounded, it's the one that's going to stand out. The Mugo pine here, that is a dwarf Mugo pine, one dwarf Mugo pine. It's about 7 feet tall, is standing out because there are all those vertical tree trunks so it's what tends to get your attention. And it can happen even with a thing like a big tree that's got a round top when everything else in the background is spruces.
Pyramidal.
Everything's pyramidal, so your rounded plant's going to stand out. So you look for either what you have that's unusual, or look and say, I have a lot of mounded stuff. Maybe I could use something pyramidal. This is a dawn redwood. I love dawn redwoods.
Oh, yeah.
And I want our son's dawn redwood to look like this one.
Grow.
Because we don't have any other pyramidal trees in the area. Linden is also pyramidal.
Little leaf linden, basswood.
Basswood, until it's quite old. So you can add things that have a natural shape that's going to stand out. We'll worry about where to put them later. You just need to decide what it is that you need first. And that texture can stand out. So something fine can stand out among coarse. For instance, if you have a ton of rhododendrons, something very fine in texture, like a pyramidal yew, could stand out. If you have a lot of fine textured things, then something like a rhododendron or a holly or a euphorbia could stand out. One hydrangea in among a whole bunch of yews stands out, not just by its color, but because its texture, the areas of light and dark that are forming. So the hydrangea has large areas of light reflective surface and dark, so it makes a pattern that's more open than the denser yews have. And this carving, if you look at the feathers on the bird and the opening in the body of the trunk there, you're looking at coarse texture against the fine background of yews. So one tall shrub, it's some junipers in among all these mounded arborvitaes and boxwoods and mounded yews. A little bit of upright stands out. A rock, because it's upright. Rocks are amazing how they can stand out, particularly if they don't have a plant growing on them, can really stand out. This is a crevice garden at Tony Reznachek's, and it's gorgeous in the wintertime, even without any plants showing. So you're looking at the unusual things that stand out because of their shape or their height or their brightness or because of their texture. And there are also things that stand out because they form lines in the landscape, where the walkway or a driveway meets, where a strong vertical line meets a horizontal line, where lines step up and down like a skyline. We look at those lines and we see them. So we see a house and we see a porch going horizontally to the vertical of the wall, and the point where the door meets the porch becomes a very important place. Our eye stops and rests there.
Always.
Our mind takes a brief turn there for a minute, and the same thing happens at the roof line, where we go across the blank area and then up, which is why we want to hang a wreath at that point, and we want to put a pot next to the door. It's just a natural thing to do. And when we see a line that doesn't make it to where we extend it mentally, we go, well, there's that walkway, there's the stairs, and they're going up the door. We can't see the door, but we know the door is there, and we tend to decorate that area. We consider it more important where one line meets another line. So if you've got a path cuts across and meets the door, then the door becomes that much more important. If you've got a path that's going there and you see a bench, there's a destination like the door that was hidden before, you will assume that the line goes there and your eye will go there too. We can't see where the driveway goes, but we assume it has something to do with the house, and we're willing to follow that line. And along the way, in following lines, when we get to midpoints between two similar items, whether it's gate posts, matching lanterns on either side of a garage door, a blank wall with two windows on either side of it, we feel compelled to decorate between two like objects. So standing back at the Cleveland Botanical Garden, at their Japanese garden, and looking at two upright stones, your attention will go back and forth between the two upright stones and rest in the middle. It's just, it is what we do. We go back and forth, and we can't decide, so we stop in the middle. Which is why, if the door is in the middle of the house, we feel like we should put two matching things on either side of it, which we've warned you against many times, because they will not grow the same.
Even though those two are pretty close.
They're pretty close, yeah. And you don't have to do it that way. People look at something like this in a planter even and say, well, what can I put in the middle between them? There's just this urge that I must put something in where there's a midpoint that's been established. So when you're looking in your yard, try to be cognizant of whether you are focusing on an area and thinking something needs to go there because it's a midpoint or because it's where two lines intersect. You don't have to do that. It's just a natural tendency of ours to do that. And it can end up with overplanting areas, putting too much stuff in a place that seems important, rather than thinking about putting the right thing along the way on a path, and then getting attention to that individual thing. That people do it with doors all the time. It's important. I must put something there. I'm going to put a precious Japanese maple right there where the path meets the door. And in doing that, I hide the door. Japanese maple really needed to be out a ways or over to one side. It's not the right thing to go there.
Right over in here would be much better.
Yeah. But there's no better time than now to plan these kinds of things and to critique them, because the bones are showing right now. Like you said when we got started here, your year-round garden is showing up. Your perennials have left spaces now, and the lines and shapes that stand out have to stand out on their own. So the hedge on the right, the pines in the background, the gazebo, and the yews in the foreground are what end up standing out, as well as the rock. And that's what you say, now here's what I've got. I have a path that obviously leads to the gazebo. Look at that. There's no path across the lawn. There's nothing across the lawn. But your eye goes there. It jumps from one place to another and says, okay, now that's good. We put the gazebo there so that your attention would go not straight across the yard, but there. But notice that there's a blue spruce. That's a Coster blue spruce grown up. We keep it small, keep it cut. There's a blue spruce on one side of the gazebo, but there's nothing blue on the other side of the gazebo. Do you feel an inclination to want to put something blue over there in order to frame the gazebo? Because that's the kind of thing that happens to us. And we say, do we want to do that? I would kind of like to do that here. Whoops, sorry, I'm going the wrong way. And snow, when it covers everything, tends to make all of the distances collapse. So the gazebo, it seems like there's much less room between you and the gazebo, and much more reason to put things important things into space that keeps them separated from the other elements, not jammed on top of each other. And it's so wonderful to look at the lines and say, yes, that's gorgeous. I don't want to hide that. And it's also good to do this in the winter because the color isn't there to distract us. When there's color, a lot of times it's all that a gardener sees, all that people see. And right now we're looking at much subtler combinations. So in the spring, we see all these bulbs that come up.
Oh, color.
There's the same view in the wintertime. And we're looking at rocks and an arbor. And there's colors there.
Mm-hmm.
There's blue spruce in the background. There's perennials with their red-brown color in the foreground. The rocks have various grays and blues in them. But it's much more subtle. And you put one little bit of color there and it would call all kinds of attention to itself unfairly to everything else. Do make sure though, well, we'll do that a little bit later, that you put your, make sure that your first spring color is going to come up in line with whatever is drawing your attention
During
in the
winter.
winter. Whatever you allow to draw your attention in the winter, make sure you line your spring up with that because you're training your eye to keep looking there. These three grasses, which we left up in our former garden in the winter because we liked to look at them, those three grasses described an arc that called for something to be put in front of it.
Mm-hmm.
These perennials are done and gone in the wintertime, and then you can see the wall. And the wall is the more important thing. And you might find, like some of our clients did that one time, remember when Bob said, you know, after you took all those shrubs out from the front of the house, let's look at the design again.
Yeah.
Because we kind of like how our house looks now.
We hide a lot of our houses
Yeah.
unnecessarily.
Yeah, so enjoy the rock. Look at it and say, is it right? Is it the way that I want it to be? This is the rock wall that I remade. I've told you about this after poor Steve and Corey spent so much time making it, and it wasn't quite the right pattern that I wanted to see. I'm sorry, I've forgotten why I put this one here right now. So we're going to keep going. A little bit of color distracts, a little bit of red, a little bit of yellow, and that's all you're looking at, and you're missing all of the interesting places, all of the lines, the path, the rock textures. You miss them once the color's out. Much better to look at it now and say, yeah, you know, it's a pretty good sized pond for that space. I like that. I think we probably need to have something more pyramidal in the back left because we've got way off the neighbor's tree. It would be nice if we had something a little bit closer in and maybe a little bit further to the left. That's how you should be looking at these things this time of year. That's why the arbor went there. And it's nice this time of year because we can see the house. We can see it, we can measure it against the landscape and, you know, and say, you know what, the tree's too big. Or we could say, you know what, the bed's too big, because you can't deny it this time of year. When the leaves fall off of the crabapple and we can see our library, we start thinking, wow, you know, I think we probably need something there. The tree, the Christmas tree, is not part of the landscape. It's just attached to a stake that we put there to fill an area that's full of perennials elsewhere during the year. And our own house is a tough place for us to look at because A, we don't like the door. One of these days I'm going to spend some time and paint the door black. But that crabapple tree shouldn't be there. It's so close to the house, but all of the birds land in it. And but it should be a little bit further out. So you can look and see where these things are and come up with solutions. Now that's just critiquing. We're going to get to changing now.
Maybe.
We got 15 minutes. So what questions do you have about?
We're actually pretty clear on questions. I've been answering what we can in the chat. Amy just has a question about, could you elaborate a little bit about the line and sort of training your eye. So Janet had asked about what to do when there's what would you put when there's a driveway or a walkway where the end is invisible? And I said, it's not that there's one prescription, it's more that just be aware that's the way someone's eye is moving. And so to use that movement. And I think Amy's asking for a little bit more elaboration that you might be better at there.
Okay, that what you say is entirely true. You notice that there's a line, which means that your eye is following it. And you might have a tendency to put something at the end of each line, when the idea would be to say, if it's a line and it's a line that I like, maybe I can repeat that line with 3 matching or similar objects flanking the line on one side. Or maybe I can put one object on at the beginning of the line, the part that's nearest me, and have another appear just a little bit toward what must be the end of the line. So you're looking and saying, do I like following that line? If I do, maybe I need to echo it with my plants. If I don't like it, why did I outline it with a bed? Or why did I follow it with a hedge? It's looking at and trying to critique the lines and say, do they go where I want to go? Steve and I live now in a yard that's rectangular. Most people do in the way we set things up, but we don't like rectangular. We don't like feeling like we're living in a box. And so after a little while of looking around in the yard, we built a line that's an arc around us. We did it with arbors. We said, we're going to put these arbors here. And this year, after 2 years of working on where they went, we just made the path that connects them. And it's a very nice path. We'll have to show that to you a little bit later.
Someday.
Yeah, as soon as we can get pictures of these things that we're doing. But it took us a while to say, we just don't want to go into the corner. We don't want to make a triangle of our yard by walking into the corners. We want to have an arc go through the yard somewhere. Where can we put it? And what can we do about these plants, big trees that are planted in straight lines? Well, I guess we can plant a few other trees like them, not in that same line, so that we break the line. We make the eye go back and forth a little bit. It'll take time before they get big enough to do that, but it's beginning to work.
Yeah. So for advice, maybe if you take a picture of your yard and then you're using that for thinking about the design and the shapes, that you might want to draw some lines on there that are invisible lines, that are the way the eye is moving. That's like Janet's drawing with the arrows across the house. That's maybe be aware of those invisible lines. And that's actually all we really have for design questions right now. So I think we can move on.
And we'll give you some help with that visualizing. It's on our webinar list for starting next year, because in the spring, we know you'll probably need some help. How can I draw this? How can I see this? It's the thing that bothers Steve the most, is he can't see what's not there. He can see very well what's there and takes beautiful pictures, but he is always saying to me, wow, you knew this was going to look like this. And I say, well, yeah, I'm good at seeing what isn't there.
I'm starting to get there gradually, but it took 40 years.
and there are things that we can show you that'll help you out, I think. And we'll do that in a later webinar or in our workshops. So that'll do it for Chapter 2 of Winter Interest in the Landscape. We've done critiquing.